right, good evening, and welcome to our BESE District 6 Candidate Forum. I'm here with candidate Jody Rollins,
Hello.
and I wanted to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to the folks here in the room.
Hi, my name is Jody Rollins. I am running for BESE District 6. I'm originally from East Baton Rouge Parish. I was born and raised in Louisiana, went to LSU, got a degree in business, and eventually, after I worked for a short time as a political fundraiser, I went to work for my family business. I sell nuts and bolts. I'm not a I just want to say, I'm very sick, and I appreciate y'all allowing me to do this via Zoom. I'm not really myself, but I'll do my best. I'm not a politician, and I don't play one on TV. I never really wanted to be in politics. It was never a goal of mine. And then years ago, after spending my life in a private schools, with my first public education experience being Louisiana State University, I have a son and a daughter. I'm a mother of 4, and I have an additional child that is a child I had guardianship over. It's my husband's niece. But my son is disabled, and my husband's son is disabled. And the private schools wouldn't take him. So I entered into public school with my children. I started to realize really quickly that education for all wasn't what I thought it was. My son, he couldn't read, he couldn't write. I asked all the right questions, I read all the books, and it wasn't what I was experiencing. So as I started working up the process, I reached BESE member, LDOE, and my school board, it was run very much the same. And I found that problematic. I never saw things improving over a decade and a half. And as I started to talk to more and more of my friends, they were struggling in general ed and EL and gifted and talented, and they were having trouble getting access to those things, transportation. And I started to ask a lot of questions, and I started advocating for children with disabilities because it's what I know a lot about, laws. But I started advocating
Okay,
at
about
state
30,
level.
about 30 more seconds on your intro.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't
okay.
sure. They said 45 minutes. I wasn't sure. So the reason I decided to run was I found that BESE ran very much like my school district, which is not what I expected. And they weren't really asking questions that I saw very often. And so I decided to run to try to make systemic changes to ensure that choice is great, but it has to be for all. Education needs to be quality for all children, regardless of any differences they may have. And that's why I decided to run for BESE.
Thank you. So we'll move to our first question tonight. To give you some background, right now Louisiana has a wait list of families that qualify for the Child Care Assistance Program, or what we call CCAP. CCAP helps parents secure quality early care and education for their children while they work, go to school, or look for new jobs. CCAP families live in communities across the state working in critical areas of our economy. CCAP is primarily funded by federal money that is due to expire. To serve more of the estimated 143,000 children in need in Louisiana, an increased state investment in CCAP is necessary. So the first question tonight is, do you support or oppose an increased state investment in CCAP?
Absolutely support that. Do you want me to elaborate?
Yeah, absolutely. Please say more.
Okay, so I can speak from firsthand experience. I do well, but I am, I have a lot of advantages. And I'll be completely transparent. I didn't know what those advantages were until I gave birth to what is statistically in public education a minority child in the subgroup. My son is significantly disabled. One of the things that was very shocking to me was I've heard for years people blame certain issues for why the state is not succeeding. And I can tell you that my son was waitlisted for 9 years. I had a job, I had health insurance, and the cost of educating a child, we can't even get daycares for our children. So it's incredibly expensive. I was very much behind TEPRA because, being able to work doesn't mean that you don't need help. And so I have this in my family, my husband's niece. I tried to help her get that child care assistance, and it was very hard to get it. And last time I checked with her, she was waiting still. I 100% believe that, you have to show children that there's an opportunity for better, and you have to take care of them. And in order for their parents to take care of them, they have to be able to work. So you could be fiscally responsible, but we have a lot of other areas that I believe we are wasting money on that we could divert to ensure that these parents can work. Also, children need to know, I had a lot of people tell me, well, you're the mom, you should just stay home. Most people that I know cannot afford to do that. They cannot do that. So to me, it's also, you show your children that this is what we do to support our families. We get jobs and we work. And if people in poverty, or even on marginal poverty, middle class people sometimes cannot afford daycare, especially if if they have multiple children or their children have special needs. I do think that we have to look at that appropriately, but we have to look at where that money that we don't want to divert, where is that going?
Okay.
So I would definitely want to consider that, and I'm going to ask them a whole lot of questions about where their money's going to come from, how we're going to ask for it, and we have to go, like, there's other things. I could name 50 things they could cut that I'm seeing, consultants that do nothing, etc.
Okay.
So
we need to move on to the next question, but thank you. Okay. So the next question, so for the context, teachers in child care centers in Louisiana earn a median wage of $9.13 per hour with minimal benefits. Low wages in this profession contribute to high turnover, which affects the quality of care that children receive. So this next question is, what is your plan to improve compensation and benefits for the early childhood workforce?
Well, I'll be honest with you. It's been very difficult. I started to research this actually for my own school district years ago. They are paying paraprofessionals, I want to say after taxes and benefits, it's like doesn't even equal $800 a month. They are a critical part of our school system, in every school system. I think early childhood is the same thing. We're putting a lot of burden on early childhood centers. We're heavily monitoring them, which I fully support. And so if we want to keep quality people in them, I have to look at the money. I don't necessarily have a plan, but we need to do that. There needs to be, but I also would further that. We need to do more for paraprofessionals and staff in public schools too. So just to clarify, to be transparent, not early childhood is great and we need that. It's critical. And in fact, had my son been in an early childhood center that was private, he probably could have read, because Louisiana LDOE does a lot of monitoring of those centers that are private but yet take public funds, but not so very much in their own schools. So yeah, there has to be a plan, but I have a lot of questions with finances that I have struggled to figure out. So I can't say exactly where the money would come from until I'm able to get that documentation, but I have worked on it. I've done many PRRs. And yeah, it needs to happen. And it needs to happen in public schools too.
Great. And piggybacking on that and something that you said earlier, the average cost of childcare in Louisiana is more than $7,800 per child annually, placing quality care out of reach for many working families. If elected, how will you address substantially increasing access to quality early care and education for Louisiana's working families?
Well, I don't want to say we have some great schools and some great early childhood care, but we have some issues. So I think the first thing as a BESE member I would want to address is where are the weaknesses in that system? If we're if and then I have, my question, I'm a Republican, I'm a Republican. I believe in fiscal responsibility, but we have to make sense. What we've done all this time hasn't shown gains in our state, not significant ones. We have to make sure that the child care that's available to all families is quality, not just certain families or families that are picked to be in certain schools. So, in order to address the problem that you're suggesting, which is making sure they have access, we have to know that it is quality first. And I think that we need to make sure that literacy that is being addressed in early childhood doesn't stop when they get to our schools. And I know there were some things done. They were sort of implemented, but enforcement and compliance is an issue. So my focus, to be perfectly honest with y'all, is the fact that I don't see a lot of compliance throughout certain systems. And that is when you ask me as a person living the life of a public school parent, which shockingly, I've seen many members of school boards and BESE members whose children have not been in our schools. They've been in private, but not our public, which I think you need to have I've been in both. I lived private and I'm living public. And to give access to everyone involves public funding. So we have an obligation to taxpayers and parents to make sure that even what we have now is quality. We're doing that to some extent, but we could do a lot more.
Thank you. So for our fourth question, research indicates that children who participate in high-quality early childhood and education programs, for example, childcare, preschool, even home visiting, are more likely to be reading at grade level by the third grade, graduate high school and college, and be employed in their adult lives. Given this strong return on investment, do you support or oppose increased investments in early childhood education?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I support also
absolutely support?
Absolutely
Just to clarify.
support it.
Okay, thank you.
I support it, and I also, to go further from what you said, I support the same high quality standards in private early childhood should be in other systems. So you have to be able to compare apples to apples. If we have a standard, a set of curriculums we're using in one, and they are outperforming what's required in our public schools, that's an issue for me. And that's what I've seen. So I think, yes, I fully support it. Yes, I think my son cannot fully read, and he is 6.5. He has an IEP, but he's just slightly delayed. Looking at what I've learned in the last 3 years, just looking and I've been learned in the last year, if I had it to do over again, I may have made a different choice, because the curriculum for certain things in private early child care that are like the different types seems more stringent than what is allowed to be used in our other systems. But yes, I'm sorry to digress, but those are things that are very important to me. So yeah, I totally support it, and I want it to be great for all of the children, not just certain kids.
Thank you. Okay, turning our attention to some other children's issues. In Louisiana, 1 in 5 children face hunger or food insecurity. When children are hungry, they cannot focus in school, experience greater health issues, and have a greater likelihood of behavioral and social issues. Research shows that food assistance programs like the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, and the Women, Infants, and Children Program, WIC, reduce poverty and food insecurity, leading to improved health and economic outcomes, particularly for children. My question is, what meaningful policy solutions will you propose to make it easier for families to access nutrition through our schools?
Well, there's one thing that I do want to say that I definitely can speak to this point. When you struggle with resources for any reason, whether it's maybe the parent themselves can't is illiterate, and I've seen that in my advocacy work, or the parent maybe is legally blind, or the parent is of a different, like, they don't understand. Also, on the flip side, there are parents like me who didn't know anything about how the state functions. Like, I knew from my work as a political fundraiser, I know how a bill becomes law, and I vote, I know all that, but I didn't really understand what steps a parent had to go through to get resources, and I didn't know how difficult it was. I also was under the impression that, the state didn't have any money, and then I sat in appropriations a few years ago and went, wait a minute, we have tons of money. Why are we doing this with it? I think that one thing that could help parents is more information given to children at school that is easy for them to access and understand, so they even know the programs exist. There are some programs that no one ever told me about. I looked online. A lot of the ways that parents seek help. There's a few people that are very helpful. Karen Scallon is wonderful if your child needs Medicaid and has a disability. But there's a lot of parents, like when I've had family members or friends say, look, I lost my job and I don't know if there's anything out there. It's surprisingly difficult to navigate. So I think we need policies in place that there are access to parents, not in a demeaning way, but so it's available to all parents. Some districts will tell you, well, it's on our website. A lot of it is buried. I think in general, we need more uniform ways to distribute information to the people that need it the most in a way that they do not feel embarrassed or, overwhelmed or intimidated by the process. I think some of our processes are very hard. Parents will shut down or give up, and not just related to SPED, but all areas, especially people that are in poverty and food may be an issue. So as a BESE member, I would have to look more into what they can do. Don't want to misspeak and say that I can solve every problem, but I think access to information to all families that informs them of these programs that we have, how they get them, how to apply. What if they don't feel that it's correct? What if they feel like this is not right, or they have an issue that they don't feel like they're getting heard, or that they have the ability to fill out the forms? Sometimes it could be something as simple as that. But no child should be, I totally agree with you. And I would say, and I hate to be a statistic person because I'm not, but I attend a lot of meetings for children. Some have significant disabilities, some have minor. One of the first questions I ask is what time of the day it is. Because often what you stated, they're hungry. And because they were overwhelmed or because the lunch was rushed, which is happening in EBR right now, I've heard, and that is very concerning. And absolutely, the BESE members need to get involved in that issue. All of the issues going on in EBR, I think. That is a problem, and it needs to be addressed, but it needs to be addressed in a way that all parents are aware of what there is, and that if we need to give free lunch to a certain group of children who are performing poorly because of their poverty level, I mean, we have these funds that we're using. We spend a lot of money on things here. I think we can well afford it if that's affecting their performance in school and in life, actually.
So as a follow-up question, there are groups of advocates that are working toward universal healthy meals for all students. So no forms, no cash registers, just, meals are provided just like everything else that comes along with education. Would you support making Meals for All part of the MFP?
If you had asked me this question 7 or 8 years ago, I probably would have said no. But during COVID, the things that I saw and heard, and the fact that I was not aware until COVID, when so many children were out of school, that was their chance to be fed. And as a human being in a state that and I know I keep harping on this, but there's so much consult, and we have people in charge, and we have 400 employees at the LDOE, and we have all these things. And I, yeah, I think given what happened during COVID, I would, because I wasn't. Now I would want to look at that, and I don't want to put us to the point where we have no ability to pay teachers, but I think we should look at that for certain, especially what happened during COVID. And I know we tried to get kids fed, but that was even a struggle. I've in the districts I've talked to.
Okay, that's all of the prepared questions. I can turn now to questions from the audience. Do you have any questions for our candidate tonight?
I think she hit a lot of points of what people don't know what goes behind the scenes. Like one thing she did say is about COVID is when the school was shut down, that was a lot of their kids, minority kids' way of eating. I do appreciate that she's very honest when she sits up here and says, I don't have a plan, but we can look into it. And that's something that's on the table. A lot of people don't say that. One thing I didn't know too much about Betsy, and I think what she's fired up to understand is that, she is a mom that is with private school and public school, so she knows both. So she's not going in there like she doesn't see what's going on. She's going in there head first. It's like she's ready to fight a tiger, and let's go. So I really appreciate that. So I don't have any questions about it.
All right. If there aren't any more questions from those gathered here, you can go ahead and go to your closing statement.
I just want to say, I have gotten very little support from the many groups in our state that back BESE candidates. I went into it thinking that that was the way to go, and I kind of see it different now, because I thought I had to do that to win, and I still have to be honest with whoever was going to see this or listen. I really don't think I have a chance, because at one point I'm sitting there and I'm listening to things that they're saying, and I don't agree. And I don't agree because I know too much now to think that it is equal right now. It's not. We're not doing anything about it. And that's why I want to try to win by talking to people, but then I got COVID. I'm hoping that the people in Louisiana are as frustrated as I am that things aren't getting better. I'm hoping that they have questions for people that have been doing this far longer than me. There are people that are termed out on BESE that they have no answers. And I'm willing to ask the questions. And sometimes that's important to ask, why did we do this? I also think, and I can assure you all of this, whoever's going to see this, if you call me as your BESE member and you ask me about something that my initials were on or my name was on, I will know what you are talking about. That has not been my experience with some BESE members. They don't know, and some of them are very informed. Some of them are helpful, some not so much. But I think that we shouldn't be doing what I see in my local district and many local districts. We have to really look at what is being presented to us, and we have to talk to people. If we don't understand, ask questions, get data, and look at that. So to me, I think we need a change. I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I can say this, that I have no one giving me money and that's legal. There's nothing wrong with that. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I am not receiving support from groups that is financial. I am doing this myself. I've had a few friends. I have not spent any of their money. I haven't spent any money because I don't think we could give our education system double, and I'm not sure it would fix the problems. So I didn't want to run on this based on how much money I have or how much money I spend. I'm hoping to, at the very least, when I heard, a BESE member told me competition makes people better. So I hope that if enough people give people in power competition that are just regular folks, it will get better. And that's why I'm running.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your thoughtful participation tonight, and thank you for the audience here who had questions for you. We appreciate your time tonight, and we hope you feel better.
Thank you. And thank you so much. Y'all have been fantastic. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity. And if anyone thinks of any questions or the video is showed to a board of some sort, they are welcome to contact me in any forum and I will answer.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
So first, we want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to those here and also those watching on video. Tell us who you are and why you're running for BESE. You have about 2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay,
Yes.
great. Okay, so my name's Ronnie Morris. I currently serve on the State Board of Education. I represent BESE District 6. BESE District 6 runs from East Baton Rouge through Livingston, Ascension, Tangipahoa parishes, and it includes Zachary and Central School Systems. So there's 4.6 million people in the state. There's 8 elected members on the board. So every BESE member represents about 500,000 people. And of course, you got the 3 additional BESE members that are put in place by the governor. I'm a retired ExxonMobil engineer. Been retired 2 years now. I'm a first-generation college graduate. We have 4 children. I have 5 grandchildren. Is that better? There we go. I volunteered in education throughout my career. I went back to school, back to LSU at age 30. I was a single parent and had 2 little girls. Worked my way through school. Taught for 1 year, taught high school calculus and physics for 1 year. Then went to work for ExxonMobil. 25 years there, retired 2 years ago. Now in retirement, I work as a substitute teacher. So I taught Algebra 2 today at Dutchtown High School in Ascension Parish. And I sub in schools, throughout my BESE district. I go to the lowest performing schools and the highest performing schools. And I talk to all the kids. And I feel like I have a really good perspective on what's going on boots on the ground.
Okay, great. Well, we have some prearranged questions, and then we'll accept questions from the audience if there's time. So right now in Louisiana, there's a wait list of families that qualify for the Child Care Assistance Program, CCAP. CCAP helps parents secure quality child care and education for their children while they work, go to school, or look for new jobs. CCAP families live in communities across the state, work in critical areas of our economy. CCAP is primarily funded by federal funds that are currently due to expire. To serve more of the estimated 143,000 in-need children in Louisiana, increased state investment in CCAP is necessary. Do you support or oppose increased state investment in CCAP?
Definitely support increased investment. It's sort of a pay me now or pay me later situation. If we invest early in early childhood education, I think the payback is like 13%. If you don't invest then kids don't start at kindergarten where they should be, and they start out behind. And then they stay behind unless there's really special interventions. And those are expensive and they don't always work. So we want to get ahead of the game and invest early and then reap the benefits. So definitely support that.
Great. So teachers in child care centers in Louisiana earn a median wage of $9.13 per hour with minimal benefits. Low wages in this profession contribute to high turnover, which affects the quality child care that children receive. What is your plan to improve compensation and benefits for the early childhood workforce?
So BESE doesn't approve funding, okay, for those salaries, but we can support the policy for implementation. We can make recommendations to the legislature. We've done that going forward, and again, I think it's a similar conversation, with bus drivers, with teachers, right? Education just hasn't been made a priority in the state that it needs to be. You hear a lot of people talk about education, we need to fix education, blah, 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 but you have to invest in it and you have to keep investing in it. You have to sustain that investment. It's a long-term investment, but it takes commitment in order to sustain it. So I share with you guys already, I work as a substitute teacher. As a substitute teacher, you make $70 a day, okay? Unless it's a long-term commitment. My undergrad is electrical engineering. I got an MBA, and I'm currently enrolled in Vanderbilt working on a doctorate in educational leadership. They pay you $70 a day to work as a sub.
Doesn't matter what your qualifications are. Yeah. Okay, thank you for that data. The average cost of childcare in Louisiana is more than $7,800 per child annually, placing quality childcare out of reach of many working families. If elected or re-elected, how would you address substantially increasing access to quality care and education for Louisiana's working families?
I'm sorry, are you speaking specifically to that age group or?
Yeah, specifically to early care and education.
Yeah.
How do we increase accessibility so that families can afford it?
Well, you have to provide the funding, right? I was in some conversations with Dr. Libby Saunier, who leads this effort, statewide. And, one of the conversations that we're having is you have to find a dedicated funding source. So one of the things I recommended was, currently there's a big energy transition nationally. And in Louisiana, they just had a new lease for offshore windmill platforms, right? So that's additional revenue that the state is going to draw. So that's something I suggested was, where's that money going, right? You've got gambling money, you've got other streams. You've got to find a dedicated resource for early childhood education. And once you lock it in, then you've got it for a long period of time, and it's sustainable. You can count on it. You can raise the salaries, and you're not begging for that money every year.
Great. And in our last early childhood question, research indicates that children who participate in high-quality early childhood education programs, such as early care, preschool, and even home visiting, are more likely to be reading at grade level by third grade. They're more likely to graduate high school and go on to post-secondary education and be employed in their adult lives. Given the strong return on investment, which you've already mentioned, do you support or oppose increased investments in all early childhood programs that help us have these outcomes?
Yes, definitely, across the board. I don't see how you can just pick and choose here and there. That's not a commitment. You got to make the commitment, and again, I think you go back to finding that dedicated resource. You know it's going to be there, and again, you don't have to go back every year to the legislature asking for money.
Okay. Now we turn to child hunger. In Louisiana, 1 in 5 children face hunger. When children are hungry, they cannot focus in school, experience greater health issues, and have a greater likelihood of behavioral or social issues. Research shows that food assistance programs like the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, and the Women, Infants, and Children Program, or WIC, reduce poverty and food insecurity, leading to improved health and economic outcomes, particularly for children. What meaningful policy solutions will you propose to make it easier for families to access these programs?
I just go back to the same answer. It's funding, right? You have to feed kids. How much more fundamental can you get, right? And we recognize that it's a go nowhere cycle, right? We're just in a do loop. We're in a rerun. Unless you're going to change something, how can you expect different outcomes? So you got to make the commitment for the investment. We've got a number of issues in place today that are really fundamental. One of them is child nutrition. Look at attendance, right? We've got to bring healthy kids to school, get them to school. The truancy rate in the state right now, the average truancy rate is 43%. We got to get kids to school, we got to feed the kids, we have to have quality curriculum, and we have to have highly qualified teachers, right? So those are the 3 main focus areas.
Would you support a movement to make access to healthy meals for all, so basically including school lunch in the MFP as the recommendation to the legislature on BESE?
Repeat the question.
Would you support including access to healthy meals for all, so basically rolling the cost of school lunch into the MFP so nobody has to pay for lunch, like they don't pay for textbooks and they don't pay for buses?
Right now, I think it's like 83% of the kids in the state are on free and reduced lunch program.
I can't honestly articulate to you exactly where those funds come from, if they're federal funds, if they're state funds. I don't, I'm just not, that's not my area of focus. I'm happy to follow up and look at it, but I can't articulate to you right now, you know, what those particular stream of funds are, where they're coming from. But I mean, let's be real. We have to feed the kids, and you know, how much attention are they going to have in school if their belly's not full, right? So you know, we've got to get them to kindergarten ready to go. We got to get that belly full, right? We got to have highly qualified teachers in the classroom, and we got to have the best curriculum available.
Okay, well, that's all of the prescribed questions. Do you have a question for our audience, for our candidate? Do we have any other questions over here? Candidate?
Come on, you guys have some questions? Come on.
And so I heard a little bit about like how there were things that you could do from BESE as far as like supporting and or acknowledging or what's the word, suggesting different policies like that can come down and ultimately impact the lives of our children. But you said that in this last statement that there was some things that weren't your primary focuses. What are your focuses going to be?
There's a good question. Thank you for that question. So I'm interested in several things, okay, in both ends of the spectrum. For the early childhood part of it, and the other end of the spectrum as well, you know, the high school spectrum. So let's start at the high school side. We talked a lot about, you know, the early childhood side. Let's talk about the high school side. So I mentioned already that truancy in the state right now, the state average is 43%, okay? So that tells you half the kids in the state aren't going to school on a regular basis, right? We got to get the kids off the street and into the school. I talked to Hiller Moore last month. He's the district attorney for EBR. In 2019, the year before COVID, there were 97 homicides in EBR. 90% of the victims and the perpetrators didn't finish 9th grade, okay? Get the kids off the street, get them into school, and life's better for everybody, okay? So one of my priorities is we got to address the truancy concern, right? We got to understand what's the root cause of truancy, right, in our community. Is it the buses? Is it a transportation issue? Is it I'm not cool because I don't have the right clothes on? Some kids don't go to school because they can't read. They're embarrassed, right? We got to teach kids to read. So that's one of the things I'm proud of right now, is one of the things we've worked on is identifying the literacy problem in the state. And Louisiana was #1 in the country in growth in 4th grade reading. #1 in the country, okay? So it's really important at that point in time, because K through 3, you teach kids to read. 4 through 12, they read to learn, okay? So if you're in 4th grade and you can't read, how far are you going to go, right? You're going to go out in the street and you're going to get in trouble because you don't fit in and you're truant. So we got to work on the truancy issue. Another thing is that today, 80% of the high school students in the state are on the college-bound track. They take in the classes in high school because the plan is to go to college, okay? But only 50% of them go to college. Well, if I go all the way through high school and I didn't learn to weld, I didn't learn to be an electrician, I didn't learn to be an HVAC guy or pick up some kind of skill, and I don't go to college, what am I going to do, right? How am I going to make a decent living? So 80% of them think they're going to college, but only 50% actually do. So what do the other 30% do, right? That's a problem. And then the ones that do go to college, only 40% come back for year 2, okay? So what happens to them? They get in the same boat as the original group, no skill, no college, and now they got college debt. What are they going to do, okay? So the way the system works right now is every school has a letter grade. Every public school has a letter grade, A through F, right? And you're incentivized to make significant accomplishments in specific areas, and you get points. And those points accumulate to your letter grade. So if your students get a high ACT score, if you have a high graduation rate, things like that, you get more points. Well, right now, there's more incentive to go on that college-bound track than there is to go on the vocational track, right? So there's a lot of interest to put kids on that pathway, even though that might not be what they're really interested in, right? In my mind, the incentives should be the same, regardless of which pathway you choose. I want to find out what the student's interested in, and then how far they can go on the pathway. And for me, the point should be a function of how far you go on the pathway, not which pathway you choose. So that's one thing BESE can do, to answer your question. That's one thing BESE can do, is BESE can go in and work with the local school districts and give them some time to adjust, right? So if I got an A, I don't lose my A because I'm transitioning, right? If I got a B, I don't lose my B. I got enough time to transition. But give them time to put those systems in place where they can offer the welding class, the air conditioning class, you know, in some of these other classes to students. I talked to a mom, my time's okay?
Nope, you're good.
I talked to a mom the other day who's a teacher, she's a math teacher, and she said, my son came home and he wants to be a machinist. My husband looked at him and said, you're out of your mind, you're going to college. He said, no, I want to be a machinist. So he took the class in high school to learn the skill. She said, my son makes $80,000 a year. She said, I've been teaching 20 years, I only make 60 grand. He makes $80,000 a year. I don't know what he does with it, but he makes $80,000 a year. So we need to get that, we need to change the incentives where the incentives are the same on both tracks, and then kids can pursue their passion. Get out of school, they got a good job, and plus, I like what I'm doing. I'm making good money, and I like what I'm doing, right? So that's one thing that BESE can do. Hope that answers your question. Go ahead.
Absolutely, go ahead.
Second question would probably be for the schools that do have that failing letter grade, right?
Yep.
We know most times that those schools are under-resourced, under-supported. They have, like a hard enough time just kind of like maintaining their teachers and their staff and stuff in a way that's meaningful for the kids, right?
Yep.
What is it that BESE does to help bring those grades up?
They'll bring the grades
The
up.
grades of the school so that they can be more competitive and serve those students in a more meaningful, thoughtful, intentional way.
Yeah, so there's kind of two sides to that question as I understand it, okay? So part of it is, are they getting a fair grade for the work that's being done? That's a question. And then I think the other side of the coin is, are they getting the supports that they need so that they can get a better grade, okay? To me, there's two parts to that question. So right now, as a BESE member, I work on several other committees. I work on I serve on the board for the special school district, the board that governs the school for the deaf and the blind. I serve on the Law STEM Advisory Council. So it is establishing the STEM education network throughout the state. One of the other groups that I serve on is I'm chair of the committee that's working on the growth assessment for students. So to get that letter grade, it's really a function of how close the student is to grade level, okay? Because we all want to know if we've got a third grader, I want to know they're at the third grade level, right? If I got an eighth grader, I want to know they're at the eighth grade level, and they're on pace, right? But the other part of the grade, the letter grade, is how much did they grow in a school year? We got a lot of kids in the state that are 1 year behind, 2 years behind, even more. There's one high school I go to in Baton Rouge. There's 500 kids in the high school. The principal tells me the average literacy rate for incoming freshmen is 4th grade. Okay? So you got a lot of kids in the state that are behind. But you got some really good teachers that come in and they pick those kids up. And they can grow 1 or 2 letter grades in a year. With the current system only looks at how much did you progress on the material that was presented to you this year. So it doesn't give you any credit for catching up. So you got some teachers out there that are doing some really good work in some really challenging areas, but they're not getting all the credit for the work they're doing to help kids catch up. So I'm working with this with 4 other BESE members and a panel of experts from throughout the country to look at the base case. What are we doing today? And then this group of experts is charged with creating a list of options. So the next BESE comes in, they understand one of the deliverables is a document in layman's terms that explains the current assessment system. So the new BESE members come in, they understand what's the base case. Then these experts have generated this list of options. So they know, well, if I don't like base case and I recognize we're not capturing that growth, right? Then they've generated a list of options, proven options that work elsewhere in the country. So then the board can come in, maybe I don't like the current case, I'm going to take that one. That's really a better fit, helps us to recognize the growth that our teachers are able to accomplish with some of our students. So, so that's really important that we give people credit, our teachers credit for the hard work they're doing, and we get a really good assessment of the health of the school system.
Finally, the candidate before you basically articulated that there's too much money being spent on consultants, right? Like across the parish, and that is hurting like our ability to serve our children financially and provide those things like resources and stuff like that. Do you agree with that?
Well, there's a couple things there. So, so as a BESE member, you're working at the state level, okay? So what BESE does is BESE establishes the standards, okay? So for example, BESE is going to look at, once every 7 years, the State Department of Education looks at every subject and updates the standards for every subject. And then BESE either approves or disapproves the standards. So BESE establishes sort of the bookends, and then the local school districts, they get to choose the books, the curriculum, the teachers. They've got the autonomy to make those decisions, right? As long as they comply with the standards, all right? So every student in the state of Louisiana, the dollars follow the student, whichever school they go to, okay? The state average in Louisiana is something like $13,000. Some of that's state, some of it's federal, some of it's local taxes. If I've got special needs, then there's more dollars to cover the additional support that student needs, but on average it's $13,000, okay? So that student goes into the school, in the particular school district. Now it's the responsibility of that school district to use those funds to provide the services to educate that child, okay? The state doesn't tell them how you have to spend your $13,000. It says, here's the criteria that you have to establish, right, to educate kids. But it doesn't specific, and it provide the recommendations for curriculum, for Tier 1 curriculum, but it doesn't mandate how you have to spend the money. On the other hand, the state got $4 billion during COVID for COVID relief for K-12 education. So that's $4 billion on top of your regular budget, all right? So what I did was I worked with the State Department of Education, and I said, look, I want a KPI. I want a key performance indicator for every investment you made. I want to know what you did with $4 billion, right? So 90% of that money flowed straight to the school districts. 10% of it went straight to the state, to LDOE, okay? So they could invest it in different initiatives. But for every investment that was made, it's recorded how much the investment was, what they invested in, and what was the target, okay? So if I'm going to improve literacy, I want to know what's my target for literacy. And then you got to come back to BESE and report, tell us, okay, this is what I spent, and this is my update. This is how I'm tracking towards that goal. So you've got some accountability. You know what they spent the money on, you know what their goal is, and how far they're progressing towards their goal. So you can go right now, and you can go to the website. It's a public, it's called the EPIC Dashboard. So you can Google EPIC Dashboard, and you can find out for every school district in the state how they spent their share of the $4 billion. What did they spend it on? What was their goals, and how are they tracking relative to their goals? So we got that transparency in place now for how that money was spent.
Okay, well, if there's no other questions, you have 2 minutes to close and tell us, summarize tonight and tell us why you want to continue your term on BESE.
Okay, well, thank you. So first of all, thank you for the opportunity. I love to talk about education. Like I said, I'm retired. I work as a substitute teacher, so I do it because I enjoy it. I enjoy, working with the kids, talking to the kids. But I'll tell you, when I go into the classroom and I talk to kids, I was there today, and I talk to them and I tell them, you just got elected to BESE. You can change any rule that's out there today. You can create a brand new rule. What are you going to do? The best two responses I get are, Mr. Morris, can you find me a teacher? Okay? And the second one is, Mr. Morris, can you make education relevant? So kids want education to be relevant, right? It's more than just what's in the book, right? So Where's it at? Cell phone, over there.
Yeah.
They all got the cell phone, right? They all got the cell phone. So they know what the answer is, okay? The deal is, how do you help them with critical thinking skills and problem solving, okay? Anybody can find the answer, but how do I figure out that answer, right? They get out of school in the real world, they go look for the job. It's going to be about, here's the problem, can you solve the problem? Okay? Well, I got to go into my toolbox over here, and I got to find the right tool to solve the problem. I got to have those critical thinking, those problem-solving skills. One of the really major talking points going forward now is going to be AI, artificial intelligence. Okay? Artificial intelligence. So kids in this next generation, they're going to have to be able to go into that toolbox and understand this is the problem, and I'm going to have to pull out the artificial intelligence and go help me work that problem. That's the way the next generation is going to work. And so this next BESE needs to be forward thinking, right? Thinking about the next generation, how we address this problem with 80% of the kids on the college-bound track, but only 19% actually graduate in 5 years, okay? We need to put the incentives in place so they get more value out of that high school experience. But I think you need to be forward-looking, and I'm really passionate about it, and I hope you guys support me and I get another opportunity to serve. So thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us today and being here and to answer these questions. And hopefully the people on video will have a chance to go back over and look at your responses as well. So thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you. And this wraps up today's candidate forum for District 6. Thank you for joining us tonight.